Before we begin, pause for a moment. Slow down your thoughts. Breathe deeply. Because this is not just another video you clicked on. This is a moment of encounter, a moment where truth meets the heart. There comes a time in every person's life when questions become louder than comfort. A time when experiences force us to search for wisdom beyond opinions, beyond trends, beyond the noise of the world. We all reach seasons where we ask, why did this happen? Why did love hurt? Why did trusting someone cost so much? And how do I become stronger without becoming bitter? Asterisk, if you have ever felt misunderstood, if you have ever loved someone who drained your peace, if you have ever walked away from emotional battles carrying invisible scars, then this space was prepared for you. Welcome to a place built not on perfection but on growth. A place where faith speaks gently to broken hearts and wisdom restores clarity to confused minds. This channel exists for people who desire transformation, not just motivation. Here, we don't escape reality, we understand it. We explore the deeper meaning of relationships, character, emotional healing, spiritual maturity, and the power of living with purpose. Every message shared here is designed to strengthen your inner life, awaken your discernment, and remind you that your value is never defined by how others treated you. You are not here by accident. Maybe you came searching for answers. Maybe you came seeking peace. Maybe you didn't even know what you needed, only that your soul felt tired. And sometimes that tiredness is the beginning of wisdom. In this space, we speak to the human heart with honesty and compassion. We talk about faith that survives hardship. We talk about identity that cannot be manipulated. We talk about strength that comes from character, not control. Because true transformation begins when understanding replaces confusion, and when truth replaces emotional bondage. This is more than content. This is a journey toward emotional freedom, a journey toward spiritual awareness, a journey toward becoming whole again. Here, we believe wisdom is healing. Wisdom protects. Wisdom restores dignity. Wisdom teaches you how to love without losing yourself and how to stand firm without hardening your heart. So wherever you are watching from, whether your day has been heavy or hopeful, know that this moment is yours. Allow your heart to be open. Allow your mind to be renewed. Allow wisdom to guide you toward peace. Welcome. You are safe here. You are valued here. And today, wisdom begins to speak to you. There is a silent battle taking place in many hearts today. It is not fought with weapons, and it is not seen with the eyes of the world, yet its wounds run deep. It is the battle between truth and manipulation, humility and pride, light and deception. Many people believe strength is loud, dominant, and controlling. They believe power is found in intimidation and superiority. But heaven teaches a different language. Heaven declares that true power flows from virtue. True authority rises from character. True victory belongs to the soul that refuses to become corrupted by darkness. A narcissist survives on admiration the way a fire survives on oxygen. Their identity is constructed not on truth but on illusion. They crave control because deep within them lies an emptiness they refuse to confront. Scripture reminds us that pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 16:18. Pride builds walls around the heart. Pride rejects correction. Pride feeds on attention yet starves for peace. A narcissistic spirit seeks mirrors, not relationships. It desires applause, not accountability. It draws strength from dominance, but fears exposure. And here is the mystery many fail to understand. Confrontation does not destroy a narcissist. Arguments do not defeat them. Emotional reactions only strengthen their influence. The narcissist expects resistance because resistance gives them energy. They are skilled at twisting words, reversing blame, and rewriting reality. But there exists a force they cannot manipulate. There exists a presence they cannot control. That force is a virtuous woman. Virtue is not weakness. Virtue is disciplined strength under divine order. The world has misunderstood virtue, reducing it to silence or submission. Yet biblical virtue is powerful alignment with righteousness. Proverbs 31 speaks of a woman whose worth is far above rubies. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She laughs without fear of the future. Her words carry wisdom and faithful instruction. This woman is not controlled by external validation because her identity is rooted in truth. A narcissist depends on emotional reactions. They provoke confusion so they can become the center of attention. They manipulate guilt to maintain authority. But a virtuous woman is anchored internally. She does not respond from insecurity. She responds from conviction. When manipulation meets emotional stability, manipulation loses power. When chaos meets peace, chaos becomes exposed. The virtuous woman understands boundaries. She knows that love does not mean tolerating abuse. Scripture teaches, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. Guarding the heart is not cruelty, it is stewardship. She recognizes that protecting her soul honors the Creator who formed her. She refuses to allow someone's brokenness to redefine her value. Many women remain trapped because they believe endurance alone is holiness. They believe suffering proves faithfulness. But faithfulness is never permission for oppression. The Spirit of truth does not enslave, it liberates. Where righteousness dwells, there is clarity. Where wisdom operates, confusion cannot remain hidden. A narcissist thrives in environments where identity is uncertain. They target individuals who doubt their worth. But the virtuous woman knows who she is. She understands she was created with purpose before anyone spoke over her life. She does not negotiate her dignity. She does not beg for respect. She carries peace within her. And peace becomes her shield. Notice something profound in Scripture. When Esther stood before a powerful king, she did not fight with aggression. She prepared herself with wisdom, patience, and discernment. Her strength was not loud, yet it shifted an entire kingdom. Virtue carries strategic power. It does not rush. It does not react impulsively. It waits, discerns, and moves with intention. The narcissist fears exposure more than rejection. They can survive criticism, but they cannot survive truth consistently lived out. A virtuous woman exposes deception simply by refusing to participate in it. She stops explaining herself endlessly. She stops defending her character against false accusations. She allows integrity to speak over time. And integrity always reveals reality. The enemy of the soul seeks distortion. He whispers lies that say worth must be earned through approval. He convinces many that love must be chased, proven, or begged for. But divine wisdom declares something different. Love rooted in righteousness does not chase manipulation. It stands firm in truth. A virtuous woman understands emotional discipline. She does not allow anger to control her response. Scripture says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Proverbs 15:1. Gentleness is not passivity, it is controlled power. It disarms manipulation because it refuses to feed drama. When emotional chaos finds no reaction, it begins to collapse under its own weight. Narcissism feeds on attention. Silence rooted in wisdom becomes a mirror they cannot tolerate. When a virtuous woman withdraws emotional fuel, the illusion begins to crack. Not because she seeks revenge, but because truth naturally dismantles falsehood. She also understands forgiveness correctly. Forgiveness does not mean access. Forgiveness releases bitterness but does not remove boundaries. Scripture calls believers to forgive as they have been forgiven, yet wisdom teaches discernment. Even Christ withdrew from crowds that sought to misuse him. Withdrawal is sometimes obedience. The virtuous woman walks in discernment. She listens beyond words. She notices patterns rather than promises. She understands that repentance produces change, not performance. A narcissist may apologize to regain control, but virtue recognizes transformation through consistent fruit. By their fruits you will recognize them. Matthew 7:16. Her power lies in emotional independence. She does not rely on validation from unstable sources. Her confidence flows from alignment with divine truth. Because of this, manipulation loses influence. The narcissist senses they cannot dominate her narrative, and this is what unsettles them most. There is something sacred about a woman who heals instead of hardening. Many who encounter narcissistic behavior become bitter. They close their hearts. They adopt defensive identities. But the virtuous woman refuses to allow pain to corrupt her spirit. She heals intentionally. She seeks wisdom. She grows stronger without becoming cruel. The book of Ruth shows devotion rooted in integrity. Ruth's loyalty was not weakness, it was purposeful commitment guided by faith. She walked in humility yet altered destiny itself. Virtue does not shout for recognition, but heaven records its influence. A narcissist seeks admiration without responsibility. A virtuous woman embodies responsibility without demanding admiration. This contrast creates discomfort. Her presence becomes a living testimony that character outweighs charisma. She does not compete for attention. She cultivates peace. She does not chase approval. She nurtures purpose. And slowly, without confrontation or argument, the narcissistic structure begins to crumble. Not because she attacked it, but because she refused to sustain it. The virtuous woman understands emotional detachment without hatred. She learns that love sometimes means stepping away. Ecclesiastes declares there is a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Ecclesiastes 3:5. Wisdom discerns seasons. She recognizes when persistence becomes self-betrayal. Her silence speaks louder than accusation. Her consistency speaks louder than defense. Her peace becomes evidence that manipulation failed. And this is deeply unsettling for a narcissistic spirit, because control requires participation. When participation ends, control dissolves. Many underestimate the spiritual dimension of relationships. Battles are often internal before they are external. The virtuous woman engages in inner renewal. She renews her mind daily. She replaces lies with truth. She cultivates patience, self-control, kindness, and discernment. These qualities are not personality traits, they are spiritual strength. She refuses to mirror toxic behavior. When insulted, she remains composed. When misunderstood, she trusts truth to prevail. When pressured, she maintains boundaries. This stability becomes transformative. A narcissist cannot destroy what they cannot define. And they cannot define a woman whose identity is anchored beyond human opinion. She belongs to truth, and truth cannot be manipulated. Over time, something extraordinary happens. The narcissist loses influence because their strategies stop working. Gaslighting fails when memory is grounded in clarity. Emotional intimidation fails when fear is replaced with peace. Control fails when dependency ends. A virtuous woman does not set out to destroy anyone. Her intention is not revenge. Her victory lies in freedom. Yet in choosing freedom, she unintentionally dismantles the narcissist's power structure. Darkness cannot survive sustained exposure to light. This is why virtue is feared. Not because it attacks, but because it reveals. It reveals insecurity hidden behind arrogance. It reveals emptiness behind superiority. It reveals truth where illusion once ruled. And perhaps the deepest mystery is this: the virtuous woman also carries compassion. She understands that narcissism often grows from wounded identity. She prays without surrendering her boundaries. She hopes for healing without sacrificing herself. She releases control over outcomes and trusts righteousness to prevail. Her strength is quiet yet immovable. She becomes like the wise builder described in Matthew 7:24, who builds her house upon the rock. Storms come, winds rise, pressure increases. Yet she stands firm because her foundation is secure. She walks away without hatred. She releases without bitterness. She grows without fear. And in doing so, she breaks cycles that once held generations captive. The narcissist expects chaos when control is challenged, but instead they encounter calm resolve. They expect emotional collapse, but they witness stability. They expect pursuit, but they experience distance. And this unfamiliar reality forces confrontation with their own reflection. Virtue becomes both shield and sword, not a weapon of harm, but an instrument of truth. Through patience, wisdom, and unwavering dignity, the virtuous woman demonstrates that true authority is not seized, it is embodied. And as she continues to walk in integrity, something deeper begins to unfold within her spirit, because transformation always begins within before it is seen without. The virtuous woman discovers that her greatest victory is not changing another person, but reclaiming her own soul. She realizes that peace is not granted by circumstances, but cultivated through alignment with truth. She stops asking why she was mistreated and begins asking what wisdom the experience has awakened within her. Many people believe freedom arrives the moment a toxic relationship ends, yet true freedom begins when internal chains are broken. A narcissist may leave physically, but emotional echoes remain unless healing takes place. The virtuous woman understands that restoration requires renewal of the mind. Scripture declares, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Romans 12:2. She renews her thoughts daily, refusing to carry lies spoken over her identity. She once questioned her worth because manipulation made her doubt herself. She once over-explained her intentions because she feared misunderstanding. But now clarity replaces confusion. She understands that truth does not require endless defense. Integrity stands on its own foundation. The narcissist depended on her emotional exhaustion. They relied on her desire to fix what they refused to confront. But healing teaches her a sacred lesson. She was never assigned to rescue another soul at the cost of her own. Compassion does not mean self-erasure. Love does not require self-abandonment. There is a profound shift when a woman stops seeking validation from someone incapable of giving it. Her energy returns. Her creativity awakens. Her laughter becomes genuine again. The heaviness lifts because she no longer carries responsibility for another person's broken identity. Psalm 46:5 declares, God is within her. She will not fall. This truth becomes alive within her spirit. Stability replaces anxiety. Confidence replaces fear. She walks differently because she now understands that dignity is not negotiable. A narcissist studies reactions carefully. They test boundaries repeatedly, searching for emotional openings. But the virtuous woman responds with consistency rather than emotion. She does not argue endlessly. She does not attempt to prove her goodness. She simply lives in truth. And truth becomes an unmovable wall against manipulation. Her silence is no longer rooted in fear but in wisdom. Ecclesiastes reminds us there is a time to be silent and a time to speak. Ecclesiastes 3:7. She learns that not every accusation deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding requires explanation. Sometimes silence protects peace more than words ever could. This newfound peace unsettles those who once controlled her. The narcissist senses loss of influence. Their tactics intensify for a season. They may attempt charm, guilt, anger, or victimhood. But the virtuous woman recognizes patterns now. Discernment has sharpened her perception. She understands that manipulation often disguises itself as vulnerability. She listens with compassion but evaluates with wisdom. She no longer confuses emotion with repentance. True change produces humility, accountability, and consistency. Without these fruits, she refuses re-entanglement. Matthew 10:16 advises believers to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. The virtuous woman embodies this balance. Her heart remains kind, yet her boundaries remain firm. She does not become cynical, but she becomes discerning. Healing also reveals something unexpected. She begins to forgive herself. She releases shame for staying too long. She stops blaming her kindness. She realizes her capacity to love deeply was never a flaw. It was evidence of a pure heart. The mistake was not loving, the mistake was tolerating dishonor. Grace enters her self-perception. She sees herself through mercy rather than regret. She grows stronger without hardening her spirit. Many believe strength requires emotional armor, yet true strength flows from healed vulnerability. The narcissist cannot understand this transformation because their identity depends on control. They interpret her peace as rejection, her boundaries as arrogance, and her independence as betrayal. But she no longer needs to correct their interpretation. She releases the need to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding. Her focus shifts toward purpose. She invests energy into growth, relationships grounded in mutual respect, and spiritual maturity. She discovers gifts buried beneath years of emotional survival. Creativity returns, vision expands, joy resurfaces. Proverbs 11:16 says, "A gracious woman attains honor. Honor follows character naturally." She no longer seeks recognition, yet respect finds her because authenticity attracts trust. There is spiritual authority in a life aligned with righteousness. The virtuous woman begins influencing others simply by existing authentically. People notice her calm presence. They feel safe in her company. Her words carry weight because they come from lived experience rather than theory. Pain becomes testimony. What once wounded her becomes wisdom she offers others. She comforts those trapped in confusion because she recognizes the signs. She speaks life into those who doubt themselves. Her healing multiplies beyond her own story. The narcissist's power diminishes not through confrontation but through irrelevance. Control requires emotional engagement. When she withdraws unhealthy engagement, manipulation loses oxygen. This is why virtue dismantles narcissism. It removes the environment necessary for deception to thrive. She learns to sit comfortably with solitude. Loneliness once frightened her because manipulation convinced her she could not stand alone. Now solitude becomes sacred space for renewal. Psalm 23 speaks of being led beside still waters and restored in soul. Restoration requires stillness. In stillness she hears truth clearly. She recognizes that peace is evidence of alignment with divine order. Anxiety once dominated her thoughts, but now serenity becomes familiar. She trusts timing rather than forcing outcomes. The virtuous woman also embraces accountability. She reflects honestly on lessons learned. She strengthens emotional awareness. She grows wiser in relationships without losing compassion. Healing transforms her into a steward of wisdom. Galatians 5 describes the fruit of the Spirit as love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These qualities become visible in her life. They are not forced behaviors but natural outcomes of inner transformation. A narcissist cannot manipulate self-control. They cannot destabilize peace rooted in truth. They cannot confuse a mind renewed by wisdom. Their strategies fail because her foundation has changed. She also releases the desire for revenge. Revenge prolongs attachment. Bitterness binds the heart to past pain. Instead, she chooses freedom. Romans 12:19 teaches, "Do not take revenge, leave room for justice." Trusting justice frees her from carrying burdens not meant for her. Freedom looks quiet from the outside. It appears ordinary, yet internally it feels revolutionary. She wakes without dread. She speaks without fear. She lives without constant emotional calculation. Authenticity replaces survival. Her relationships begin to reflect health. She recognizes mutual respect. She experiences conversations without manipulation. She learns that love can feel safe rather than exhausting. This revelation heals parts of her she thought were permanently damaged. The narcissist, deprived of influence, may attempt re-entry through nostalgia. They remind her of good moments. They promise change. But wisdom reminds her that consistency defines character. She evaluates actions rather than words. 2 Corinthians 5:17 declares that anyone who walks in renewal becomes a new creation. She embraces this renewal fully. She no longer identifies herself by past suffering. She becomes defined by growth. There is spiritual maturity in recognizing that not every battle requires participation. Walking away becomes an act of courage. Protecting peace becomes obedience. She honors the sacred responsibility of guarding her soul. Her confidence does not become arrogance because humility anchors her. She remembers her own healing journey. She treats others with compassion while maintaining discernment. Strength and gentleness coexist within her. The narcissist often interprets her absence as loss of supply rather than loss of relationship. This reveals the difference between possession and love. True love values freedom. Manipulation values control. She now recognizes this distinction clearly. She becomes attentive to red flags early. She listens to intuition shaped by wisdom. She honors discomfort as guidance rather than ignoring it. Emotional awareness becomes protection. Isaiah 32:17 says, "The fruit of righteousness will be peace, its effect will be quietness and confidence forever." This promise manifests in her life. Quiet confidence replaces anxious striving. She does not need to prove her worth because she knows it. Her spiritual life deepens. Prayer becomes conversation rather than desperation. Gratitude replaces fear. She experiences joy not dependent on circumstances. Faith becomes lived reality. The narcissist may continue searching for new sources of admiration, but her focus is no longer on them. She releases responsibility for outcomes beyond her control. She chooses growth over analysis of past harm. Time reveals transformation. Friends notice her lightness. Family sees renewed strength. She becomes evidence that healing is possible. Her journey inspires hope in those still trapped in cycles of manipulation. She also learns the importance of community. Healthy relationships reinforce truth. Isolation once made manipulation easier, but connection strengthens resilience. Ecclesiastes 4:9 reminds us that two are better than one because mutual support sustains strength. The virtuous woman cultivates environments where honesty thrives. She surrounds herself with people who celebrate growth rather than compete for control. Mutual encouragement replaces emotional tension. Forgiveness continues as an ongoing process. Memories occasionally surface, but bitterness no longer governs her heart. She chooses peace repeatedly. Healing becomes daily practice rather than a single decision. Her laughter returns fully. Joy feels natural again. She dreams without fear of sabotage. She plans without anticipating criticism. Life expands beyond survival into purpose. The narcissist's greatest defeat is not humiliation but irrelevance. Without emotional dominance, their influence fades. They may never acknowledge transformation, yet her freedom stands as silent testimony. She recognizes that virtue is active strength. It requires discipline, courage, and spiritual awareness. It demands honesty with oneself and faith in truth greater than circumstance. Virtue protects identity from distortion. The world often celebrates charisma over character, but lasting influence flows from integrity. The virtuous woman becomes a living example that righteousness carries authority beyond manipulation. She also learns to rest. Rest once felt unsafe because chaos defined her environment. Now rest becomes restoration. Psalm 62:1 declares, "My soul finds rest in God alone." Rest restores clarity and emotional balance. Through rest, she reconnects with creativity and purpose. She invests energy into meaningful work. She nurtures passions neglected during survival years. Life becomes abundant rather than restrictive. Her story demonstrates that destruction of narcissistic influence does not require aggression. It requires awakening. It requires identity rooted in truth. It requires courage to walk away from environments that diminish dignity. The virtuous woman becomes a guardian of peace. She recognizes early signs of manipulation and gently disengages. She values harmony but never at the expense of truth. Her compassion expands because suffering deepened empathy. She understands hidden pain in others without allowing it to excuse harmful behavior. Balance defines her relationships. Proverbs 3:5 encourages trust beyond personal understanding. She releases the need to control outcomes. Faith guides her steps even when clarity feels incomplete. Healing transforms her narrative from victimhood to victory. She no longer asks why the experience happened but how it shaped her strength. Growth becomes her focus. The narcissist's inability to control her becomes symbolic of something greater. Darkness cannot hold authority over a soul awakened to truth. Freedom becomes contagious. Others witnessing her transformation begin questioning their own limitations. She teaches without preaching. She influences without demanding attention. Her life communicates wisdom more powerfully than words alone. And as she continues walking forward with renewed purpose and unwavering dignity, the rhythm of her healing deepens, revealing layer after layer of strength she never knew she possessed, carrying her into a future shaped not by past manipulation but by truth, peace, and the quiet authority of virtue that continues unfolding within her spirit. Because healing is not a destination but a continual unfolding of identity. Each day she awakens with greater awareness of who she truly is. The noise that once surrounded her thoughts grows quieter. The internal accusations planted by manipulation begin to fade, replaced by clarity born from truth. She realizes that freedom is not simply leaving behind what harmed her, but embracing the fullness of life that was waiting beyond fear. There was a time when she measured her worth through someone else's approval. She analyzed conversations repeatedly, searching for mistakes that never existed. She carried responsibility for emotions that were never hers to carry. But now she understands a sacred truth. Accountability belongs to the individual soul. Each person stands responsible for their own character, their own choices, and their own transformation. Ezekiel 18:20 teaches that each person bears responsibility for their own actions. This revelation liberates her heart. She releases the weight of trying to heal someone unwilling to confront themselves. Compassion remains, but responsibility returns to its rightful place. Her spirit begins to flourish in ways she never imagined. She discovers peace in ordinary moments. The sound of morning light entering her room feels sacred. The calmness of prayer feels grounding rather than desperate. She learns to breathe without fear of emotional storms. The narcissist once created instability through unpredictability. One moment approval, the next criticism. One moment affection, the next withdrawal. This emotional inconsistency created dependency, but stability has now returned to her life. Consistency becomes healing medicine for her soul. James 1:17 reminds believers that every good gift comes from above, where there is no shifting shadow. Stability reflects divine character. As she aligns with stability, her inner world becomes anchored. She begins trusting her instincts again. For a long time, manipulation convinced her that her perception was flawed. She doubted her intuition. She questioned her emotions, yet discernment slowly rebuilds. She learns that wisdom often whispers before danger becomes visible. Her boundaries evolve from fear into wisdom. She no longer builds walls to isolate herself. Instead, she builds gates that allow healthy connection while protecting peace. Boundaries are no longer acts of defense, but acts of stewardship. There is profound dignity in self-respect. The virtuous woman understands that honoring herself honors the one who created her. She carries herself differently. Her posture reflects confidence. Her voice carries calm assurance. She no longer apologizes for existing. Psalm 139 speaks of being fearfully and wonderfully made. This truth settles deeply within her identity. She stops comparing herself to unrealistic expectations. She stops shrinking to accommodate insecurity in others. Authenticity becomes her natural expression. The narcissist once interpreted her kindness as weakness. They believed patience meant tolerance of dishonor. But kindness guided by wisdom cannot be exploited indefinitely. True kindness includes self-respect. She also learns the value of emotional detachment. Detachment does not mean indifference. It means refusing to internalize behavior that does not belong to her. She observes rather than absorbs. She listens without surrendering discernment. Proverbs 14:29 declares that patience brings understanding. Through patience she observes patterns clearly. She recognizes manipulation without reacting impulsively. Calm awareness replaces emotional entanglement. Her heart gradually releases fear of abandonment. Manipulation often thrives on this fear, convincing individuals they must tolerate harm to avoid loneliness. But she discovers that solitude with peace is far richer than companionship with chaos. In solitude, she reconnects with purpose. She explores talents forgotten during years of emotional survival. She studies. She creates. She dreams again. Life regains color. The transformation also affects her relationships with others. She becomes more present with friends and family. She listens deeply because her mind is no longer consumed by survival. Love flows naturally because it is no longer mixed with anxiety. Colossians 3:12 encourages compassion, humility, gentleness, and patience. These qualities emerge effortlessly within her renewed identity. She does not force goodness. Goodness flows from healing. The narcissist may attempt to rewrite history, portraying themselves as misunderstood or victimized. But she no longer feels compelled to correct every narrative. Truth does not depend on universal agreement. Peace becomes more valuable than being right. Her silence carries authority because it reflects confidence rather than defeat. She understands that some battles are won by refusal to engage. Emotional energy becomes sacred currency, spent only where growth exists. She also confronts grief. Healing requires acknowledging loss, the loss of expectations, dreams, and imagined futures. She allows herself to mourn without shame. Tears become cleansing rather than weakness. Psalm 34:18 reminds us that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Comfort meets her in vulnerability. She learns that healing includes both strength and softness. Gradually, gratitude replaces resentment. She recognizes lessons hidden within pain. The experience sharpened her discernment. It deepened her compassion. It strengthened her faith. What once appeared as destruction becomes refinement. Fire does not only destroy, it purifies. Her character emerges refined through adversity. She becomes patient with herself, understanding that growth unfolds over time. The virtuous woman also learns to celebrate small victories. A peaceful conversation, a restful night of sleep, a decision made without fear. These moments affirm transformation. Progress becomes visible. Philippians 4:8 encourages focusing on what is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, and admirable. She trains her mind toward life-giving thoughts. Mental renewal strengthens emotional resilience. The narcissist's absence gradually loses emotional intensity. Memories remain, but emotional attachment dissolves. She feels neutral where once she felt overwhelmed. This neutrality signals freedom. Her self-worth becomes internal rather than relational. She values herself regardless of external affirmation. Confidence rooted within cannot be manipulated externally. She also becomes intentional about future relationships. She observes character carefully. She values consistency over charm. She honors peace as non-negotiable. Song of Solomon speaks of not awakening love prematurely. Wisdom guides her heart now. She allows trust to grow slowly. She understands that genuine connection develops through mutual respect. Spiritual awareness deepens further. Prayer shifts from seeking rescue to expressing gratitude. Faith becomes daily companionship rather than emergency response. Isaiah 40:31 speaks of renewed strength for those who wait upon the Lord. She experiences this renewal tangibly. Emotional exhaustion fades. Hope becomes steady. The virtuous woman begins mentoring others informally. Her experiences offer insight to those navigating similar struggles. She listens without judgment. She encourages without control. Her presence becomes refuge for wounded hearts. Healing multiplies. What once threatened to break her becomes a source of wisdom for many. Her story carries healing power beyond her personal journey. She also learns humility through restoration. She recognizes her own areas of growth. She remains teachable. Strength does not eliminate dependence on grace. The narcissist may continue living unchanged, yet her focus remains forward. She releases desire for closure from someone incapable of providing it. Closure emerges internally through acceptance. Acceptance does not justify harm, it acknowledges reality. She stops waiting for apologies that may never come. She frees herself from emotional waiting. Matthew 6:21 teaches that where treasure is, the heart follows. She invests her heart in growth, purpose, and healthy connection. Her emotional treasure shifts toward life-giving pursuits. Peace becomes her atmosphere. Anxiety visits occasionally but no longer resides permanently. She recognizes triggers and responds with self-compassion. Her identity stabilizes further. She speaks kindly to herself. Internal dialogue becomes supportive rather than critical. Healing reshapes self-perception. The virtuous woman learns joy again. Joy not based on perfection but gratitude. She laughs freely. She celebrates progress. She embraces life with renewed curiosity. Romans 8:28 reminds believers that all things work together for good for those who love God. She sees evidence of this promise unfolding. Even painful chapters contribute to future strength. Her resilience inspires others silently. People observe her calm presence and wonder about the source of her peace. She becomes living testimony of transformation. She also develops emotional wisdom regarding conflict. She addresses issues calmly rather than avoiding them. She communicates clearly without fear of rejection. Healthy confrontation replaces silent suffering. The narcissist once feared accountability, she now welcomes it as opportunity for growth. Accountability strengthens relationships grounded in truth. Her emotional independence allows deeper intimacy. Because she no longer seeks validation, she can offer genuine love without expectation of control. 1 Corinthians 13 describes love as patient, kind, and not self-seeking. She embodies this love without losing herself. Balance defines her relationships. She recognizes that virtue is not perfection but alignment. She continues learning. She continues growing. She extends grace toward her own imperfections. Her faith matures into quiet confidence. She trusts guidance even when outcomes remain uncertain. Faith becomes lived experience rather than abstract belief. She discovers that strength often appears gentle. Power expresses itself through patience. Authority emerges through humility. The narcissist's inability to influence her becomes symbolic of inner victory. She has reclaimed ownership of her life. Emotional sovereignty replaces dependency. Her future feels open again. Possibilities expand. She sets goals without fear of sabotage. She dreams boldly because confidence supports vision. Jeremiah 29:11 speaks of plans for hope and a future. She embraces this promise personally. Hope becomes practical motivation rather than a distant idea. She invests in self-care not as indulgence but as stewardship. Rest, nourishment, and spiritual renewal become priorities. Balance sustains her growth. Her relationships grow healthier. Mutual respect replaces power struggle. Communication flows naturally. Trust develops through consistency. She recognizes early signs of imbalance and addresses them quickly. Wisdom protects peace proactively. The virtuous woman understands that true victory lies not in destroying another person, but in refusing to be destroyed herself. Her freedom becomes evidence that virtue holds transformative power. Her story continues unfolding with grace, patience, and unwavering dignity. Each step forward strengthens her identity. Each moment of peace affirms her transformation. And as she walks deeper into purpose, guided by truth, anchored in faith, and strengthened by wisdom gained through experience, her life becomes a testimony of restoration still expanding, revealing new depths of courage, compassion, and spiritual authority that continue to rise within her heart. Because the journey of restoration never truly ends while life continues to unfold. Each season reveals another layer of healing, another lesson hidden beneath experiences once misunderstood. The virtuous woman begins to recognize that growth is not measured by perfection but by transformation. She no longer fears challenges because she understands that trials often refine character rather than destroy it. There was a time when she felt invisible, when her voice seemed unheard and her emotions dismissed. Manipulation taught her to question her own reality. Yet now she speaks with quiet confidence, not needing to raise her voice to be understood. Wisdom has replaced desperation. Clarity has replaced confusion. Isaiah 41:10 declares, "Do not fear, for I am with you, do not be dismayed, for I am your God." These words anchor her heart during moments when old memories attempt to return. She realizes healing does not erase memory but transforms its influence. The past loses authority over her present. Her emotional strength becomes evident in small decisions. She pauses before reacting. She reflects before responding. She chooses peace even when provoked. Self-control becomes an expression of spiritual maturity. The narcissist once depended on her emotional reactions to maintain dominance. But emotional mastery removes the stage upon which manipulation is performed. Without reaction, manipulation loses momentum. Without chaos, control cannot survive. She learns to value stillness. Silence once felt uncomfortable because conflict filled her environment. Now, silence becomes sacred space where clarity grows. Psalm 37:7 encourages resting in the Lord and waiting patiently. Waiting strengthens discernment. Patience teaches her that not every outcome must be forced. Some doors close without explanation. Some relationships fade without closure. She learns acceptance without bitterness. Trust replaces anxiety. The virtuous woman begins recognizing divine timing within her life. Moments of delay once felt like rejection, but now she sees preparation. Seasons of isolation prepared her for deeper understanding. Pain sharpened her awareness. Waiting cultivated endurance. Romans 5:3-4 reminds believers that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. Hope becomes living reality within her spirit. She moves forward not with naive optimism but with tested faith. Her understanding of love evolves profoundly. Love is no longer measured by intensity but by consistency. She values honesty over charm. She recognizes that true affection respects boundaries and nurtures growth. She also discovers compassion for herself during moments of weakness. Healing does not eliminate difficult days. There are moments when memories resurface unexpectedly, yet instead of self-criticism, she offers herself grace. She speaks to herself gently, understanding that recovery unfolds gradually. The narcissist once conditioned her to overanalyze every emotion. Now she allows feelings to pass without judgment. Emotions become information rather than subtly. Learns from them and releases them. Lamentations 3:22-23 declares that mercies are new every morning. Each day offers renewal. Each sunrise symbolizes another opportunity to grow stronger. She embraces daily renewal with gratitude. Her relationships deepen because she now approaches connection from wholeness rather than need. She listens fully. She communicates openly. She honors mutual respect. Love becomes partnership rather than survival strategy. She recognizes early signs of imbalance and addresses them calmly. She no longer tolerates patterns that diminish dignity. Boundaries become expressions of wisdom rather than fear. The virtuous woman also embraces responsibility for her own happiness. She no longer waits for circumstances or people to create joy. Joy emerges from gratitude, purpose, and spiritual alignment. Psalm 16:11 speaks of fullness of joy found in presence. She experiences this fullness internally. External situations may change, but inner stability remains. Her faith becomes practical. She applies spiritual principles to daily decisions. Forgiveness frees her heart repeatedly. Gratitude reshapes her perspective. Prayer strengthens her resilience. The narcissist's influence fades further into insignificance. Thoughts once dominated by confusion become filled with vision and purpose. She redirects energy toward growth rather than reflection on past harm. Healing also awakens creativity. Ideas flow naturally. She expresses herself through work, service, and meaningful relationships. Purpose replaces survival. Life expands beyond limitations imposed by manipulation. Proverbs 3:6 encourages acknowledging God in all ways so paths become straight. Guidance becomes clearer as she aligns actions with wisdom. Decisions once clouded by fear become guided by peace. She learns that peace functions as internal confirmation. When choices align with truth, peace follows. When situations threaten harmony, discernment alerts her spirit. Her confidence becomes contagious. Others feel encouraged by her presence. She becomes a source of stability for those experiencing uncertainty. Without seeking recognition, she influences lives positively. She understands leadership differently now. Leadership is not dominance but service. Strength is not control but humility. Authority flows from integrity rather than intimidation. The narcissist sought admiration without accountability. She embodies accountability without seeking admiration. This contrast reveals the essence of virtue. Her spiritual maturity deepens through gratitude for lessons learned. She recognizes that pain sharpened empathy. Trials strengthened patience. Challenges revealed resilience she never knew she possessed. James 1:2-4 encourages considering trials as opportunities for growth, because testing develops perseverance. Perseverance matures faith. She witnesses this maturity unfolding within herself. Her internal dialogue transforms completely. Instead of questioning her worth, she affirms her value. Instead of anticipating rejection, she expects respect. Confidence becomes natural rather than forced. She also learns to celebrate others without comparison. Envy fades because identity feels secure. She rejoices in others' success genuinely. Love expands rather than competes. The virtuous woman develops emotional generosity. She offers kindness freely yet wisely. She discerns where investment of energy produces growth. She protects her peace while remaining compassionate. Ecclesiastes 7:8 teaches that the end of a matter is better than its beginning. Looking back, she recognizes how far she has come. What once seemed unbearable became pathway to transformation. She understands now that freedom required courage. Courage to face truth. Courage to release unhealthy attachments. Courage to believe in restoration. Her perspective towards suffering changes. She no longer views hardship as punishment but as refinement. Faith grows deeper through understanding that adversity often precedes elevation. Isaiah 43:2 promises presence through deep waters and fire. She realizes she survived circumstances that once threatened her identity. Survival becomes testimony of strength sustained by faith. She learns to trust her own decisions again. Self-trust rebuilds gradually. Each wise choice reinforces confidence. Doubt loses power as experience confirms discernment. The virtuous woman also becomes comfortable with authenticity. She expresses opinions honestly. She no longer molds herself to gain approval. Authentic living attracts genuine connection. She laughs more freely. Joy feels natural again. Emotional lightness replaces heaviness. Life becomes something to experience rather than endure. The narcissist's memory no longer triggers fear. Instead, it reminds her of growth achieved. Pain transforms into wisdom. Wisdom becomes protection. She invests deeply in spiritual disciplines that sustain peace. Reflection strengthens awareness. Gratitude nurtures contentment. Faith stabilizes identity. Psalm 1 describes a person planted by streams of water, yielding fruit in season. She becomes like that tree, rooted, nourished, and resilient. External storms cannot uproot her because inner roots run deep. Her understanding of forgiveness matures further. Forgiveness becomes ongoing release rather than a single moment. She forgives repeatedly, not to excuse wrongdoing, but to protect her heart from bitterness. She also learns to recognize goodness around her. Beauty in simple moments, kindness in unexpected places. Life reveals blessings previously overlooked. Her purpose expands beyond personal healing. She seeks ways to uplift others. Acts of kindness become natural expressions of gratitude. Service enriches her sense of meaning. Galatians 6:9 encourages perseverance in doing good. She continues choosing goodness even when unnoticed. Integrity becomes lifestyle rather than effort. The virtuous woman realizes that destroying narcissistic influence required transformation within herself. By embracing truth, she dismantled control without conflict. Freedom emerged through alignment with righteousness. Her future becomes filled with possibility. She dreams again without fear of sabotage. Hope becomes guiding light. She cultivates resilience through reflection on past victories. Remembering strength reinforces confidence for future challenges. Faith grows stronger with each step forward. Her emotional awareness allows deeper connection with others. She empathizes without losing boundaries. Compassion balances wisdom. She values honesty deeply because deception once caused pain. Transparency becomes cornerstone of her relationships. Authentic communication strengthens trust. Matthew 5:9 speaks of peacemakers being blessed. She becomes peacemaker within her own life first. Inner peace extends outward into relationships and environments. The virtuous woman continues evolving. Growth never stops. Each experience adds depth to her character. Each lesson strengthens her spirit. She understands that healing transformed her into someone capable of loving wisely, living freely, and walking confidently. She carries gratitude for the journey, even the difficult parts. And as she moves forward with renewed faith, grounded identity, and unwavering peace, the rhythm of her life continues unfolding with grace and quiet strength, revealing new dimensions of wisdom, resilience, compassion, and spiritual authority that keep rising within her heart as her story continues to expand, because the deeper she walks into freedom, the more she realizes that restoration is not merely recovery from pain, but rediscovery of divine design within her life. She begins to understand that nothing she endured erased her purpose. Nothing stolen from her identity could permanently diminish what was placed inside her spirit from the beginning. There was a season when she lived cautiously, afraid that joy might be temporary, afraid that peace could suddenly disappear. Trauma had trained her to expect disruption. But slowly she learns that stability can be trusted again. Safety no longer feels unfamiliar. Peace becomes her new normal. Psalm 35 declares that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. She recognizes that her long night produced spiritual sensitivity. She now values joy deeply because she understands its cost. Joy is no longer superficial happiness, it is quiet assurance rooted in faith. Her awareness sharpens. She notices emotional patterns quickly. She senses manipulation before it takes form. Discernment becomes second nature. Wisdom protects her long before conflict escalates. The narcissist once thrived on confusion. Confusion kept her dependent. But clarity destroys confusion's power. When truth becomes visible, deception loses its influence. She walks confidently because she trusts what she perceives. Proverbs 4:23 instructs believers to guard the heart, for everything flows from it. She now guards her heart intentionally. She monitors what she allows into her emotional world. Not everyone receives equal access to her vulnerability. This guarding does not make her cold. Instead, it makes her wise. Her kindness remains genuine, yet it is directed with understanding. She recognizes that love without discernment becomes self-neglect. She also learns the sacred difference between empathy and responsibility. She can understand another person's pain without accepting mistreatment. Compassion no longer requires sacrifice of dignity. Her inner voice grows stronger. Where once she doubted herself, she now listens carefully to intuition shaped by spiritual maturity. She respects internal warnings rather than dismissing them. Isaiah 30:21 speaks of hearing a voice behind saying, "This is the way, walk in it." She experiences this guidance through peace and conviction. Decisions align naturally with wisdom. The virtuous woman begins living intentionally. She structures her days around purpose rather than reaction. She chooses environments that nurture growth. She cultivates habits that sustain emotional health. She discovers that discipline creates freedom. Consistent prayer stabilizes her thoughts. Reflection strengthens awareness. Gratitude shifts perspective from lack to abundance. The narcissist's past influence fades like distant noise. Memories remain, but emotional charge dissolves. She observes her story with compassion rather than pain. Forgiveness deepens further. She realizes forgiveness is not approval but release. By releasing resentment, she protects her own peace. Her heart becomes lighter. Ephesians 4:31-32 encourages letting go of bitterness and choosing kindness and forgiveness. She embraces this instruction daily. Forgiveness becomes lifestyle rather than obligation. And so we arrive at the sacred ending that is not truly an ending, but a revelation, the moment when everything finally makes sense. The journey of the virtuous woman was never about defeating another human being. It was never about proving strength through conflict, nor about winning an emotional war. The real victory was always internal. The true triumph was the restoration of identity, the reclaiming of dignity, and the awakening of a soul that remembered its worth. There comes a moment in every life when illusion breaks, a moment when the heart realizes that love cannot survive where respect is absent, a moment when truth rises louder than fear. That moment changes everything. It separates survival from living. It transforms endurance into freedom. The virtuous woman once believed her role was to fix what was broken around her. She believed patience meant silence, forgiveness meant tolerance, and love meant self-sacrifice without limits. She gave understanding where she received confusion. She offered loyalty where she encountered instability. She poured compassion into a vessel that could not hold it. But wisdom arrived quietly. Wisdom did not shout. Wisdom did not accuse. Wisdom simply opened her eyes. She began to see patterns she once excused. She recognized manipulation disguised as affection. She understood that control often hides behind charm, and insecurity often disguises itself as superiority. And in that awakening, something sacred happened. She stopped abandoning herself. The greatest prison she ever lived in was not created by another person. It was created by doubt, planted within her own mind. Doubt about her value. Doubt about her perception. Doubt about whether she deserved peace. Yet truth has a powerful nature. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. She realized that virtue is not weakness. Virtue is courage wrapped in grace. It is the strength to remain kind without becoming naive. It is the wisdom to forgive without returning to harm. It is the bravery to walk away from what diminishes the soul. Many believe a narcissist is destroyed through confrontation, exposure, or revenge. But the deepest truth is this: a narcissist loses power the moment their reflection disappears from the eyes of the person they tried to control. When admiration ends, manipulation starves. When emotional dependency dissolves, control collapses. She did not destroy anyone through anger. She destroyed the illusion through awakening. Her silence became louder than arguments. Her peace became stronger than manipulation. Her absence became the boundary that restored her life. And something extraordinary began to happen. For the first time in a long time, she felt herself returning. She rediscovered laughter that did not require permission. She experienced rest without anxiety. She felt joy without fear of punishment. The heaviness she carried slowly lifted, and she realized that freedom feels unfamiliar at first when one has lived too long in emotional captivity. Healing was not instant. healing rarely is. Some mornings still carried echoes of past pain. Some memories resurfaced unexpectedly. But each time she chose compassion toward herself instead of shame. Each time she chose patience instead of self-criticism. And that choice changed her destiny. She learned that healing is not forgetting. Healing is remembering without breaking. She began rebuilding her life piece by piece. Not hurriedly, not desperately, but intentionally. She created routines that nourished her spirit. She surrounded herself with voices that encouraged growth. She learned to listen to the quiet wisdom within her heart. Gradually, her identity shifted from survivor to overcomer. She no longer introduced herself through wounds. She defined herself through growth. The most beautiful transformation occurred in her understanding of love. She realized love is not proven through suffering. Love is revealed through peace. Love does not confuse. Love does not compete. Love does not demand the shrinking of another soul. True love allows expansion. And once she experienced inner peace, she refused to trade it for emotional chaos again. Her boundaries became sacred agreements with herself. They were not walls built from bitterness, but gates guarded by wisdom. She learned that every no spoken in self-respect creates space for a deeper yes to life. There was a time when she feared loneliness. But she discovered something profound: solitude filled with peace is not loneliness. Solitude becomes healing ground where identity grows without interference. In those quiet moments, she rediscovered purpose. Purpose had never left her. It had simply been buried beneath survival. She began pursuing dreams once postponed. She allowed creativity to flow again. She invested in personal growth, spiritual maturity, and emotional stability. She became curious about life again. And slowly, her world expanded. People began noticing the change. Not because she announced it, but because peace has a presence. There was a calm confidence in her voice, a grounded stillness in her demeanor, a quiet authority that required no validation. She had become emotionally free. Freedom changed how she interacted with others. She no longer chased approval. She no longer feared disagreement. She no longer tolerated disrespect disguised as personality. Instead, she chose connection rooted in mutual honor. She learned to recognize healthy love that listens, love that supports, love that celebrates growth, rather than competing with it. Relationships became partnerships instead of battlegrounds. And in this transformation, she realized something deeply spiritual. Virtue does not merely protect the heart, it elevates the entire life. Her faith deepened in ways she never expected. No longer driven by desperation, her spirituality matured into trust. Prayer became conversation rather than emergency. Gratitude replaced constant pleading. She understood that divine wisdom had guided her even when she felt lost. Every painful chapter carried lessons preparing her for strength she would later need. What once felt like abandonment revealed itself as preparation. She saw how resilience was formed through adversity, how discernment was sharpened through betrayal, how compassion deepened through suffering. Nothing had been wasted. Even pain became teacher. She began sharing her story indirectly through kindness, encouragement, and presence. Others found comfort in her calmness. People opened their hearts to her because they sensed understanding without judgment. Her healing began healing others. This is the mystery of restoration. When one soul heals, many lives are touched. She did not preach strength, she embodied it. She did not claim wisdom, she lived it. And perhaps the greatest miracle was this: she no longer needed closure from the one who hurt her. Closure emerged within her own understanding. Acceptance replaced unanswered questions. She stopped asking why it happened. Instead, she asked who she had become because of it. And the answer filled her with gratitude. She had become wiser, stronger, more compassionate, more discerning, more alive. The narcissist faded into a distant chapter, not erased, not denied, but transformed into part of a larger story of growth. The power dynamic that once defined her life no longer existed because she had reclaimed authority over her own emotions. She realized that true power is self-mastery. It is the ability to remain kind without surrendering strength, to remain open without abandoning wisdom, to remain loving without losing identity. Her journey proved that virtue dismantles manipulation not through force but through clarity. Darkness cannot dominate where light persists. She learned to celebrate ordinary moments, peaceful mornings, meaningful conversations, genuine laughter. Happiness no longer depended on dramatic highs. Contentment became her foundation. She also embraced imperfection. She stopped striving to be flawless. Instead, she focused on authenticity. Growth became more important than image. And in authenticity, she discovered freedom. The woman who once doubted herself now trusted her intuition. The woman who once sought validation now affirmed herself. The woman who once endured chaos now cultivated peace. Her life became testimony that restoration is possible. Not easy, not instant, but possible. She realized that virtue is revolutionary in a world that often rewards manipulation. Choosing integrity requires courage. Choosing forgiveness requires strength. Choosing peace requires faith. Yet these choices transformed her life more powerfully than revenge ever could. She understood that victory is not watching another fall but standing firmly in one's own wholeness. Her future no longer frightened her because she trusted herself. She trusted her discernment. She trusted her resilience. She trusted the wisdom gained through experience. Hope returned fully. Dreams returned boldly. Love returned wisely. And she walked forward carrying lessons etched into her spirit, lessons about dignity, boundaries, faith, compassion, and self-respect. The virtuous woman became living proof that healing does not erase scars but turns them into symbols of survival. Her scars no longer represented weakness, they represented transformation. She became a woman who could love deeply without losing herself. A woman who could forgive without reopening wounds. A woman who could stand alone without feeling incomplete. And perhaps the most beautiful truth of all was this: she no longer needed to prove her worth to anyone. She simply lived it. Her presence reflected peace. Her words carried wisdom. Her life radiated quiet strength. The storm that once threatened to destroy her had instead revealed who she truly was. And so the story closes not with triumph over another person, but with triumph within the soul. The virtuous woman did not merely escape darkness, she became light. She walks forward now, not as someone broken by the past, but as someone refined by it. She moves through life with compassion in her heart, clarity in her mind, and faith guiding her steps. Her journey reminds every listener, every wounded heart, every searching soul that restoration is real. Freedom is possible. Healing is attainable. You may have been misunderstood. You may have been manipulated. You may have felt unseen. But your story does not end there. Within every human heart exists the capacity for renewal. Within every painful chapter lies the seed of transformation. And within every virtuous soul lies a strength capable of overcoming even the deepest emotional battles. The lesson is timeless. Virtue does not merely survive adversity, it transcends it. And as her story continues beyond this moment, beyond these words, beyond every past wound, she carries forward a life defined not by what she endured, but by who she chose to become. Whole, wise, supri, and forever grounded in the unshakable peace that comes when a soul finally remembers its true worth.